Hello YouTube, it's me, Gunches, and I made for you a special Moonlight Greatsword build. I woke up bright and early, 3:30 a.m. to be exact, to harvest beautiful moonlight for this build, just for you. That's right, we're doing some heavy attacks, some Moonlight Greatswording. The build is on screen now for those of you who are interested. It could be more optimized, I'll be honest. You could optimize a little further for the Great Moon damage, but I wanted to have more options. I wanted to have a smidge of armor. I wanted to have many more things, but you could easily optimize the build where Rogier's set for the, glintstone skill damage per piece of his set of armor. You could get the intelligence to 80. You could lower that endurance. You could keep your vigor at 60. You could do a few things, right? But I like the way this build turned out. And it hits pretty hard. Did you see that phantom that got wrecked in the opening sequence? 1,800 damage. My goodness, and the AR just climbs. And there's a handful of buffs you can apply. But still, I had to wake up bright and early for you. I hope you appreciate it. You know, those moonbeams, they disappear right as the sun crests the horizon. You gotta gather them quickly, and you gotta smith them into this here blade. Now, a handful of you are probably thinking to yourselves, wait a minute, Gunches, you aren't a lunar princess, you can't make a Moonlight Greatsword or a Dark Moon Greatsword, and you'd be right. I had to gather the Starlight Shards by 3:30 and get them to my in-game wife, Ronnie, by 4:30 a.m. so that, the sword could be nice and charged up before the sun rose. Don't tell my actual wife. She will not understand the blue waifu in the least bit. Still, did you see that? He almost killed me, but I also melted him in return. I like this build. I had a tremendous time with this build. It was a lot of fun. It's probably the closest I've come to an ultra gimmicky build, but it's not that gimmicky because you're using the Moonlight Greatsword, You still have a regular Greatsword kit. It's not the best moveset for a Greatsword, but those heavy attacks hit so hard. Do you see that? 1,000, 1,000, he gone. That brother gone. I smile. I get a little stupefied even watching my own footage like some sort of narcissistic moron. I see the big damage number, the neurons fire, the monkey brain returns, and I am giddy all over again. And if I were to recommend one thing for this build, more so than any of its components in-game for making the build, it's a mindset while playing the build, and that mindset is patience will equal prosperity. Take your time, right? Watch your opponent, look for openings, because whiff punishing with the Moonlight Greatsword, Ash of War, even though it's technically a modification for the heavy attack, will bring you success. And look at this, we have Zamor Ice Storm. I may not have shown that during the build portion. I replaced the last spell with Zamor Ice Storm, so that on spawn you have a great AoE. Because we specialize the build so much, we don't have access to anything with crazy AoE like Waves of Darkness. Did you see that little starburst of his? It hit early. That was weird. You should run back the footage and look at that nonsense. Just gawk at it. Just admire the latency, the nonsense. And so I went through these invasions with a certain amount of bloodlust. I couldn't help firing moonbeams at everyone I could. I just wanted to make those hits to get you them tasty clips. And if I were to play this build again, I would be more patient than I was the first time. I did really good for the first handful of invasions, exuding patience. And this guy, he's just getting R1 because he just won't leave my immediate presence. And greatswords, curved greatswords, they're kind of the king of controlling close to you. Curved greatswords are probably a smidge better, but bada bing, bada boom, 1,772 damage. And that's because we're stacking lots of things, right? In my physic flask, as you may have noticed if you were paying attention, I have the 10 intelligence plus magic damage because we're doing so much magic damage, even though if they nerfed the mix-in a recent patch, it's still a percentage, it's still pretty good. And when you're stacking buffs, more is enough, even if some of those buffs are smaller. We got Terra Magica, if you want to be up close and personal about it, for people who are just there to make your life painful, even on a regular hit, doing 642 after his absorptions. That's not so bad. And then, of course, the Moonlight Greatsword has its own buff. we are running the Shard of Alexander, the Godfrey icon, and the Axe Talisman, all three of which buff some component of the heavy attack when it has the axe. They buff it in different ways in different places, so they're not always active at the same time. When they're all active simultaneously is if you hit somebody point blank with not only the beam part of the attack, but the blade part of the attack. You know, while it's buffed up, I already said that. And yeah, that's when it does the big damage. That's when everything's working in tandem, including the Physic Flask, and it makes sense. If you're on a Terra Magica, you will absolutely melt some people. The damage number is big, and I think the damage number gets increased even further if that point-blank hit also happens to proc Frostbite, which I have no idea how much Frostbite it does, but I think I've yet to see somebody survive more than 2 moonbeams and not get frostbitten. I think I've seen one occasionally. A lot of people get frozen on the first moonbeam. Chunk saved the red because he's getting comboed by that dragon halberd spinning slash combos into itself. Kind of the lazy man's combo machine. But everyone's going to use it anyway, so. But the build has a couple options. I'll show off a few, but this is mostly a Moonlight Greatsword video. Check out this Kenneth Haight. Yeah, I could have swapped my first talisman to the Sorcery Talisman and it would have hit a little harder, right? The Graven Mass Talisman. No, that was just the Godfrey icon plus whatever buffs were in my Physic Flask. So still, you have Cain't of Haima, you have Zamor Ice Storm, you have a couple pokes. You can grab whatever spells you like. If you like the Carrion Sword sorceries, you can switch the staff to the Carrion Scepter. Not the Carrion Scepter, the Carrion Glintstone Staff. You know, use those sword sorceries. I like a straight sword with the Carrion Sword sorceries personally, but if you can make a one-handed greatsword work, go for it. I'm awful at one-handed greatsword. For some reason, I just have a miserable time with it. Two-handed makes more sense to me. And this guy, I'm getting way too giddy with my Moonlight Greatswords. I need to remember to calm down, to exude patience. And do you see that damage? We are trading with Carrion Piercer, not the smartest choice. And then we get the roll catch. Oh, it's tasty. I love roll catching with this thing. It's so silly. Having a little extra range on that power attack makes all the difference in the world. You know, I played the previous Souls games, the Demon Souls, the Dark Souls, the Bloodborns, and I think this is my favorite version of the Moonlight Greatsword. I like the fact that it's an Ash of 4 that changes the heavy to have the beam attack. I also like that it doesn't eat up its own durability to do the damage. So in terms of how it feels and works, it's probably my favorite version of the Moonlight Greatsword. But I will say I really liked how the Moonlight Greatsword looked in Dark Souls 1 and 3, but this one's not bad. It's a pretty good contender. The particle effect is very pretty. Can't go against that in any meaningful way. Look at that. I love that. Every time it buffs up, it makes me smile. I am way too easily amused, and that's probably for the best. Look at that Cain't of Haima. Free ranged damage. Okay, it's not free. FP is a precious, precious resource. But still, that person not paying attention, give him Moonlight Greatsword. Somebody thinks they can apply Carrion Glint Blade to themselves, hit him with the Moonlight Greatsword. If you are on ball and you're paying attention to somebody, and they're not a buggy mess like this fellow, and you can actually read them a little bit, punish with the Moonlight Greatsword. It's a little bit predictive, but there are some animations that take long enough you can truly make people regret their lives by hitting them with that Moonlight Greatsword. And unfortunately, we had another host give up. It happens. It feels bad. He's looking at me. I want to fight. I buffed my weapon, you know. I drink up. He's got to be expecting something, right? But no, he's just standing there. I don't know what he wants. So I pull out the Carrion Regal Scepter because it combos. It combos. I have been hit with it a handful of times since patch 110. I can't escape it. It feels like I get hit by the whole thing. I don't know if it always did that or if that's new. I genuinely don't know. I don't remember that being in the patch notes. They were so incredibly brief. Nothing in there was about staff poise damage being buffed, especially on the Carrion Regal Scepter. But hey, it's a pretty good sidearm, right? It hits pretty quickly, it holds people in place, it does decent damage. Honestly, not a bad sidearm for a kit like this, and since you're probably going to have the staff on you at almost all times, unless you're really switching up the weapons, then yeah, it's a wonderful sidearm, and that's a bad trade for us. But then we get the counter hit with the silly Moonlight Greatsword 599, almost kill him in one single hit. My goodness. He died in 3 hits, of course, but the bulk of it was that one hit. We actually ran into this guy again, and so I decided to put him back to back, because, I don't know, solo hosts are an interesting animal, to say the least, right? You never know if they're truly alone. I shouldn't say you never know. There are third-party ways of finding out. Within the confines of the game itself, you don't know till you see a title card on screen or you see them in person. In person in the game. Goodness, what's wrong with me? That doesn't make a lick of sense. But hey, I wanted to show off some Glintstone Dart. Hits kind of hard. 700 is not bad for something you can swap to. It has phenomenal range and tracking, right? For a little dagger. And that was uncharged, right? I should have used it more, but I didn't. That's also another thing that this kit gets, because the Shard of Alexander and the Godfrey icon will both funnel into the charged attack of your Glintstone Chris. So, wonderful sidearm. I think it's funny how I started calling them sidearms when I should probably be calling them something like secondary weapons. Sidearm makes it sound like I'm packing a 45 Colt in my waistband here, and I'm here to shoot up these fellers for messing with my farmstead. You know, they're hurting my cattle. They're stopping me from gathering moonlight at 3:30 a.m. when I wake up this here morning, and I use the Colt 45 as God intended because they don't make a 46. Okay. I don't know where I was going with that voice, but still, use your environment. This log saved my life. There's not much in the Ashen Capital to kite the boys into. I should have probably looked for the gargoyle, but they might have gotten too spooked and prolonged the fight. I wanted to keep them engaged for the most part, and this log saved my life so many times. It gave me just a little boost, a little juke, you know, here and there. I just wanted to make that Moonlight Greatsword hit, and it just wasn't happening. These boys just had their heads on. They had their heads on straight enough that I couldn't hit them with the Moonlight Greatsword. I'm probably just, you know, it's a skill issue. We'll be honest about it. It's a skill issue. But still, we have more tools than just the Moonlight Greatsword, even if that is the bread to the butter of this build. For one, we have access to Night Maiden's Mist, so people are doing silly things in silly places. They can have a little chip damage as a treat. Look at that. Just eating them away a little bit. My goodness, was that doing 460 to the host? Relatively cheap damage. Not too bad. Area control. Fully charged Star Shower. It gets a bonus from the Godfrey icon. 754, and then we hit the Phantom for 1025. The damage on this build is nice. The time to kill is pretty low, as long as you get everything going. Okay, so this was a good moment, a good learning moment. I saw the host go one way, and I saw the Phantom getting killed the other way, right? And this is just good practice for winning invasions, right? If you see one guy is on his own and in trouble, deviate. Go solve that problem. Make him regret it, right? Find those brief 1v1s, even though there was mobs there, right? It's not necessarily honorable, but it is smart. And if you're overly concerned with winning, that's a thing you need to worry about. And it doesn't require being necessarily dirty. It's time management in your invasions. It's a very good thing to get in the habit of. My goodness. So I wouldn't call this build overpowered. I would call it a strong build, right? It has a gimmick, essentially, and the gimmick hits very strongly, but it's not overpowered. It's pretty telegraphed. Any decent player with their head screwed on is not going to be easily tricked by your tomfoolery like that poor fellow there. Unfortunately, that is not the weapon to just R1 spam at point blank. There are better weapons for that. But I will say that this is a strong build, right? It is a good enough build. It is a build you can have success with and have fun with. Is it meta? Is it the best? No. It doesn't need to be, right? You just need to have your head screwed on right, and you'll be just fine. Here before you on screen is Pasio Shimel, or however he wants his name to be said. I always run into him here, specifically in, the Volcano Manor early area. And he's always taunters tongued, and he wants people to fight, and I don't get it. He's got funky builds, he has a weird play style. I don't know. I don't know what he's trying to accomplish there. I don't understand the idea of being a Taunter's Tongue host and waiting in the same area for people to arrive. And then also having, like, the blue, you know, the circlet ring on that summons blues to you. I don't get it. It's beyond me. I feel like if you're looking for them crazy fights, that you would be the invader. But, I don't know, maybe he wants the extra flasks, maybe he's not that comfortable. Maybe he wants to have teammates like blues that can't hit him. I couldn't tell you. But, Elden Ring Psychology, that should be a series I should do at some point. What a just psychoanalyze uselessly players for which I have no context. That'll go over well, that can't go poorly at all. But, I figured a lot of these clips in this video were astoundingly short, right? And that's kind of the problem that you have when you have a good enough or a strong build. That's what I was leading to earlier. A strong build is that sometimes you have these 40-second invasions, right? Where you get in there and you either clobber or you don't clobber. That's also a problem with gimmick builds, right? Where if your gimmick succeeds, you trick your foe, it's a pretty quick win, right? And so, the build is strong. Lots of short clips, and I thought I should include a long clip. So here you go. Here's your longer clip of navigating a 3v1, right? They're all working together. They're all a bit skittish. I think they genuinely do want to fight the boss, but they also want me dead because that's fun, right? They don't seem particularly sweaty. Do you see that charged attack? It still hit for 900 something with the sword unbuffed. Here's a moment in patience. Right? You want to heal immediately after getting hit with the Bolt of Grand Sax. Keep in mind, the Bolt of Grand Sax uncharged is faster than your healing animation, right? So that is one thing. I need to stop saying right so much. I'll work on that one. So if somebody's charging a Bolt of Grand Sax, don't heal, seek cover, or dodge, right? If you heal immediately after the bolt has gone past you, you'll usually be okay, but it's fast enough. See, look at me. I'm getting punished here for healing at a poor time, also hitting the Ash of War button. That's another thing that happens. When you get tunnel vision, you're not playing patient, you're not being calm, you make mistakes. And one of the mistakes that happens with the Moonlight Greatsword is that it's changing your heavy attack. The Ash of War is not the beam button, right? It's the heavy attack that is your beam attack. You have to buff it first, of course. And so it means whenever I do swaps to like the Glintstone Chris, because I've tried to reconfigure my brain to which one is the specialty attack on the weapon, I often accidentally do a heavy attack with the Chris before I remember the Ash of War button most of the time is L2, not R2. And that is also a skill issue. Look at that Bolt of Grand Sax. His Bolt of Grand Sax hits like twice and a half as hard as the Phantom's Bolt of Grand Sax. I don't know if there's a level disparity or somebody's build is too diverse. He's wearing the arcane hats. Maybe he's actually a really bad arcane build that has a decent amount of dex. I don't know. But to use the Bolt of Grand Sax and have the lightning go off, that's 40 dex. That's not too shabby. None too shabby at all. But yet again, I want to harp, and I'm going to harp on this. Be patient. Keep your head clear, right? Think about your issue. Think about what you've done already a lot that isn't working. Think about other avenues you could take to reach your goal. It's a little hard when you're somebody like me who's trying to get clips with the Moonlight Greatsword, right? I want this to be a Moonlight Greatsword video. I don't want this to be a Magic Warrior video. I've done those, right? I'll do more in the future, but that's not the purpose of this video, right? You gotta be patient. You gotta look for your openings. You gotta use different tools that your enemies haven't seen yet, like Star Shower to make them panic roll, and then you watch the rolls so that a running heavy will clip them at the end of their attack. You gotta find the alternate things. You gotta be patient. Wait for the red flask to be deposited into your bank account. Use another Star Shower, but then find a way in, right? And of course, I will say this as something I didn't realize in the moment. Moonlight Greatsword, kinda not so great on sloped surfaces. I will say that, unfortunately. The beam attack just doesn't always track downward very well. There are a multitude of projectile attacks. There I am getting too giddy with buffing my weapon. Being stupid, playing sloppy. But the Moonlight Greatsword and many other projectiles in this game have a sort of dead zone, right? Where, you know, they'll aim horizontally just fine, then there's a little bit of a dead zone, then it'll aim downward at an extreme angle fairly well, right? I said right again. I didn't mean to. I need to work on that. That's a silly mitigation I've come up with in my vernacular when I'm speaking for an extended period of time, and I wish to correct that. Funny as that is. So if you want to learn more about those projectile dead zones, there's a YouTuber by the name of Amir, A-M-I-R, period, right? He does YouTube content, Elden Ring YouTube content, and he has, I think his most recent video at the time of this upload is specifically about those projectiles at their dead zones. I could be wrong, but go check him out. Very factual, really gets into the deep nitty-gritty. And so he can help you learn all about them funky dead zones. When I was fighting that fellow in the Volcano Manor in the earlier clip, he was downward at such an extreme angle that I didn't have the dead zone. See that glint blade? That guy was probably a better, more consistent player than I was with Stormboard, but he wanted that glint blade, and he forgot. I woke up at 3:30 this morning to charge up this Moonlight Greatsword. But you also have some good moments, right? Oh my goodness, I keep doing it. I keep saying right. I'm going to leave it in there as a reminder to myself. I want to get over that. I don't need to be saying that phrase so much. It might be invisible to some people, but I notice it. It is a natural consequence of not only me speaking for a long period of time and seeking to fill these invasions with commentary, but sometimes I feel like if I can't come up with words fast enough, I need to mitigate to be able to come up with something to say in the moment. And in all reality, the best trick is not to have mitigating factors, not your ands, rights, things like that. Instead, it's taking a moment, slowing down your speech. Nobody will know the wiser if you speak 10% slower than you normally do. And you'll open up your mouth a little more, you will be able to enunciate, unlike I do. I have a problem where if I speak quieter, I slur more. If I speak loudly, I don't slur my words. So, kind of a funny little speech thing. I've never been too much of an orator. I've always been a wannabe novelist, you know, coming up with stories, characters, themes, motifs, all those things, stringing them together in a coherent and fun manner for the drama or the action or whatever I'm going for in that moment. And so I've always considered myself more of a drafter and a scripter, less so a off the top of my head orator. There is a term for that. It is extemporaneously, right? That is the concept of coming up with something off the top of your head, no prior scripting, things like that. And that is something that streamers have in their skill set, at least the successful ones. They're able to treat it very organically. They're able to just say what they would like to, and it comes out very smoothly. And that's something I would like to work on as well. These videos are like a microdosing of that challenge, because I usually don't clip out the audio I speak unless I do a very poor job of saying something, or if something in my household makes a noise, or if I bump the mic like a fool. So, we'll get there. I'm improving. I've rambled long enough. I thank you for your time here today. I hope you enjoyed those tasty big damage clips, and you enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.